Okay, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today. Mark has been teaching here the Los Angeles Center for Photography for many, many years. I've known him way back to the days we were located on Venice Beach and to the evolution of the organization. He's been a terrific inspiration for the organization. He serves on our board of advisors, always got great input on the organization. I do want to read you off some of his credits. He's got an extensive array of credits, so I've abbreviated very much so. But Mark has editorial work, has appeared in publications such as Vanity Fair, Lifetime, Newsweek, Geo, National Geographic, Traveler, Condé Nast Traveler, Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, on and on. I mean, the London Times Sunday Travel Magazine, Los Angeles Times Sunday Magazine. And Mark has many books to his names too. Faces of the 20th Century, Master Photographers and Their Work, The Way of the Japanese Bath, Wanderlust, Inside North Korea, Inside Iran, the travel photo essay describing a journey through images. And his latest book is The People of the Forest, which is a book about orangutans. So at this point, I am going to give the floor over to our moderator. Mark, take it away, my friend.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate those more than kind words. And the cover of The People of the Forest is an orangutan. It's not a self-portrait, as a few of my friends have suggested. But today's about street photography and all the amazing people we have here. And I'm thrilled to talk with them. We're going to jump into it and get to know each person even more. Obviously, I think those that are particularly into street photography will recognize many of their images, but we want to hear sort of the backstories from the people, because of course we're most of the time behind the lens, and as I think it was Melissa who said about photography on the sly, so you don't want to necessarily be in front of it. I remember years ago speaking with William Klein, who's a great street photographer, said the stuff he was doing then couldn't be done today. So I want to, but obviously the three of our guests today are doing it today, because he thought there was an innocence there that could get him to get away with it. So one of the things when you guys are doing your presentations, I'd love to know if you find it confrontational, things like that. But we're going to get into that when we go. But first up is Elena, who is joining us from Spain.
Hi, hello to everyone, and thank you for the invitation. And I'm very happy and honored to be here today and to share my photography and my perspective on street photography with you. And yeah, so.
Good. So Elena, and also, as I said, you're based now in Spain. But you've been all over the world, and part of your career was moving to Spain and doing editorial work for magazines and newspapers there. So maybe just give us a quick little background how you ended up in Spain.
I grew up in Russia. I was born in St. Petersburg. I grew up in Russia and Vietnam. My mom is a medical doctor, so we spent together several years in Vietnam. And I decided to study in Europe. So I went for studies to Germany. So I lived in Germany for many years, and I just liked Spain. And at some point I went to Spain and also worked in the newspaper. And yeah, as a journalist was one of my ideas. But I didn't follow this career of journalist. And now I'm switching. During the Corona crisis, I moved to Spain, but normally I'm based in Hamburg in Germany. So I'm switching between two countries, and in Europe, it's easy to do and enjoying it a lot.
Great. And you must speak 5 languages. Is that about right?
4. Well, to start with my view on street photography, or with my approach. So my approach to street photography is an intuitive one. So when I do make photos, I don't plan anything. I don't go to certain places. I don't look for certain subjects. I don't look for certain scenes. So it's completely free, and it doesn't depend on a city, on a subject, on a daylight, on nightlight. And this is one of the, my main ingredient of my photography, that there is no plan. And many of my shots are made on the go. I always have my camera with me. So I have a little camera and I have my camera with me. But I also do go sometimes with the purpose to make street photography. I go into the city and explore the city. And here again, I do this very intuitive. And basically what I do and what I will later show in my photos, I do photograph what is on my mind and what I later recognize on the street. So I do not really document the reality, and you will see it. I do interpret reality through that, what is on my mind, what is going on with me. And this is my approach to photography. And some photographers, some street photographers, I heard a couple of times this perspective and totally agree. And the last one I read, it was an interview from American photographer Nina Klink. She said, well, street photography, it's all about being in the present. And I totally agree with this view. And because you have to be fully aware when you're on the street and trying to make a shot. So you have to be aware of so many factors and aspects that are coming together. So you're in the middle of the life. So you're actually living to the fullest to trying to make a shot. And when I do think about meditation, when I do think about being aware in the present, I do think about meditation. And now this is its Vietnam connection, where I did grow up. In Vietnam, I did enjoy as a child also being in Buddhist temples. So I feel very connected with the Buddhist teachings, philosophy, and religion. And so I would like to explain this very briefly, this metaphor, why I do think street photography has a lot in common with meditation, because meditation, it's very basic technique when you do observe your breath. And in street photography, we do observe the life on the street. And when you do observe your breath, you're breathing in and you know you're breathing in, and you're breathing out and you know breathing out. And in that moment, you take a part of the outside world, the air, bring into your body, and when you're breathing out, you breathe out a part of your inner world. And this similar thing is happening when we do street photography. So we take a part of the outside world, but we do discover on the streets, connect this with our view, our lens, our mood, and then give it back into this world. And you can see it in our images. Then these images we share then, and we do connect with other people through our images. And so it's the whole process is a big interconnection between us and streets, between our inner world and the outside world. And this is my view on it. And this is what I see in my images. And I would like to present some and to explain more or elaborate more on this idea, what I presented very shortly.
That is so beautifully said. And that concept of mindfulness, I mean, for all of us, since we're all photographers or into art, whatever, to be there in the present, but so beautifully said. Thank you.
So I will start with this image. And this photograph I made in Spain, in Alicante. It was a late evening. It is the middle of the city. It is the center of the city, the so-called bar area. So people there are going out from bar to bar. And it's car-free, it's very nice. So it was warm summer night. And I noticed this couple, and they were loud. They were probably drunk, probably funny. And so what I love about this image when I look at it, so it looks like a typical photograph of a couple. So nothing special. So I mean, it's a typical subject you can find, but when you look a bit deeper on it, this image has, for me at least, a symbolic meaning, because it has so many contrasts. on different levels. So, and when I do speak about contrast, I mean the colors, the black and white, what you can see in their clothes, in their looks. And another contrast is that the couple was very passionate, and there's probably a kiss happen here. So there's a lot of passion here, but they're leaning on the walls of the Catholic Church. So, and there's another contrast. And I love this image for this mixture of contrasts, because it represents for me this non-dualistic view on the reality. So life writes the best stories, and it's not black and white, and it's always mixed. And for me, and this image contains a lot of this philosophy, of this mixture of black and white. And so this image, so I've seen this scene, and how did I select it, and how did I edit, and that's incorporation of my view on life, and I love this idea that this image incorporates for me. This shot I made in Hamburg on the go, and it wasn't planned. It was a rainy evening, so you can probably see it. It rained heavily, and it was December, pre-Christmas time, but in Hamburg, it rains a lot also in December. So it was cold and rainy, and I was actually rushing home because I wanted to be home. And I was passing by this bar, and I don't know could I see this man, but this is this moment where I said, I don't plan to make a shot, but sometimes I kind of feel something, and then it makes me turn around, and then when it matches something, a memory, a state of mind, an emotion, a feeling of me, then I make a shot. It's very intuitively. I do not decide consciously on it. So I saw this scene, and I made a shot very quickly because it was completely wet, and then I rushed home. And then I looked later in that shot, and well, it is pre-Christmas time, and this old man is all alone in the bar, and even the Christmas tree looks upset because the star is a bit down. And yeah, that's this image for me. It's about loneliness. It's about being lonely. And many people do feel lonely, especially around Christmas season. And yeah, that was that feeling that I catched through the window, because I made a photo through the window.
Oh, this was actually shot through a window. You were not inside the bar. Oh, I see the reflection in there now.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just passing by, and somehow I looked at this man and this scene, and yeah, and it just caught my attention, this scene.
Right. And once again, the contrast, just like what you were talking about in the last image, is the same thing. It's interesting because you're shooting and letting the ambient light, you had the very warm tones in that first one with the the very warm Kelvin temperature, and here you really feel that orange warm glow, and then with him silhouetted against the white wall, and what people should know about you as well is you're a professional therapist, and so the mind and studies of that obviously play in, and awareness of it really plays into your work.
Yeah, so that's true, and that's true. That's always on my mind, and that's also what catches my attention also on the streets. So this image for me, that's about being alone and being lonely. This image I made in Spain, in Cordoba, in a beautiful park, Alcázar de los Reyes Cristianos. And there's a big monument there. It's a Christian monument. And at that day, I was just doing like a tourist, like I was being as a tourist there, just looking around. But at that day, there were many parents with children there, and children had very festive clothes, and maybe it was like a communion or some Catholic ceremony, I'm not sure. And there were also professional photographers there. So, and this girl was having a photo session. So actually, when I saw this scene, there was the girl and the photographer and me behind. So I was observing for a while and what they were doing. And this scene then that I captured is actually the last moment you can see the girl. So that the next second, the girl will disappear behind the black door. And well, of course, I made a couple of shots of this setting. And then I selected this one. And when I later looked at it, well, this photograph for me is about leaving. It's about saying goodbye. And because this image for me also has a very strong visual. It's pretty classically built. So it's about living in grace and living in beauty. And it made me think, and also she's wearing a white dress, and it also made me think about funeral in Vietnam. The people are wearing white, and it's also about saying goodbye. And there's also very beautiful ceremony there. And this all together, well, this image particular, this resonates with this idea that like the ending would be beautiful too. So that's important, not just to make a good like meeting or welcoming, but how is important to live in grace and in beauty and to make it beautiful, the goodbye ceremony. And as a therapist also, I know that when you work on mourning with your clients, so one step of the mourning process, and a goodbye is always a loss, sometimes a bigger one, and sometimes not such a big one, but it's always a loss. And in this mourning process, the ceremony of saying goodbye, like a funeral, is very important. And when this step is missing, people do suffer more. So this image for me, when I look at it, this a reminder, that it's important to live in and make it beautiful.
Well, it's interesting because we have a number of comments. Everybody's saying gorgeous, beautiful for your images. Ken said something that actually I thought about as well when I see this image, where I see it as a child moving into her young adulthood. So it's interesting how we can see the exact same thing and our mind interprets it in different ways. And then also, Wendy wanted to know what typically, because obviously you're shooting this wider instead of going in tighter. What lens and camera body do you have? So maybe if you could address those two.
Yeah, I work with Ricoh GR.
Okay. Is that a fixed lens or a zoom?
Yes. Yeah, it's a fixed lens. It's 28 millimeters.
Yeah, sort of the classic street photography lens there. Beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, I love this lens because it's very handy and small. I can always have it with me. So this image, again, it wasn't my intention to make any photos. I was just enjoying the park. And then I saw it, and this living scene is the perfect scene for me, and it has a big symbolic meaning for me, and that's what I see in it. This photo I made in Spain, in Malaga. It was in the beginning of pandemic, where there were no vaccination, and many people have died, also in Spain, also many old people. So it was this beginning of pandemic where people were scared of COVID. And I saw this man on the bus stop, and he was alone. And I kind of had this feeling, I had this thought on my mind: when I would be old, I would probably also be scared of this COVID thing. And so I had this, I don't know, I caught this thought. And then suddenly this man, he looked up to the sun, and in that moment I made a shot. And when I later looked at this image, and I knew what was in my mind, and I knew that at the time when I made the thought, when I connect all together, this image for me is about hope. That it was a difficult time, like dark as an image. It was dark, sad time for many people, and all we had was hope, just to hope that it will pass by, or the vaccination will come, or something. And this photo for me is about it. How does she look towards the light? And the best you can do is to lean towards the light. It's a quote of Joseph Campbell, and I like it a lot. And this is what is happening here in this image. This is one of my first photographs and one of my favorite ones. I made it in Copenhagen, and it was also accidental shot. I just, again, as a tourist, I entered the church, and Copenhagen is quite a cloudy city. But at that moment, just for maybe a couple of seconds, the ray of light came in, and the window were blue with this white cross emblem. And so you could, so you had this cross on the wall suddenly, and it felt like a miracle, yeah, such a bright ray of sun. And then it went, and then the lady stood up and disappeared, and it was just, and the moment was gone. And I was so happy that I managed to make this image, because again, later when I look at it, I have this image has a certain meaning for me, and its meaning is very powerful one. Well, I'm a spiritual person, and this cross behind her, and I do like that she's not noticing the cross. She doesn't know it's there. And for me, it is actually how it is in our lives. So we may not notice, but there is a good power there, and it's always there. So even we do not feel it right in the moment. So, and exactly how it is in this image is happening. So so that's about it.
No, it's interesting that is there, I mean, this image is going to be very different than the question I was going to ask, but is there a time of day you tend to go out? The first three images had that very warm golden light that was part of it, or even when it was full night with the guy in the bar, you let that very warm Kelvin temperature go. Obviously, this is a different time. It's a magnificent image, but that's interesting. I was thinking maybe you tended to, work during the edges of the day, but I guess, as you said, you have the camera with you all the time, and it could be any time of day.
Yeah, that's right. I also have a little son, and so when you have a little child, your life is very unpredictable. So every moment I use, and it can be in the evening, it can be in the morning. And when we're together, I also shoot. And So you have to stay flexible. And this image is, it's at daylight, and it's again Spain. And this is a playground. What I think this is the best playground I've ever seen in my life. And I think every child on planet Earth deserves this kind of playground, where you can't see it on this image, but it's really big and really well done and just really perfect. And children are just happy there, just enjoying there a lot. And for me, it's this very happy image, and like the boy who is swinging on the swing and flying, and he's carried and he's safe on this beautiful playground. The sun is shining. So this is this childhood happiness idyll, you would think. And when we do think about childhood, we all do know, well, not every childhood is happy. And that's not true, that childhood is a happy area. So Agatha Christie said once, when you have had a happy childhood, it's the best thing, the luckiest thing that could happen to you. And this is true. And many people who do see happy childhood pictures, they get sad. And that's why when I look at this image, what I do like, this additional layer, there's another little boy here who is looking at this happiness and who does have sad feelings. And this little boy, he has a role of an observer. So because when we do observe an image of a happy childhood, so we may have mixed feelings. And this little boy also has mixed feelings because he actually wants to be on a swing, and he's sad. And I know exactly he's sad because this is my son actually waiting to be on the swing. So I know for sure he was sad and disappointed that he had to wait. And he had to wait, and mom did a shot. So that's how it, it came to this shot.
It's so funny you should say that, because I was going to say, how did you know what was in his mind? But there's the answer. I'm glad you said that. That gives you extra insight for sure.
Yes. But again, as I said, I do not document the reality, because the man in the bar, maybe he wasn't lonely at all. Maybe he was happy to be alone this one particular evening with his beer. So I don't document the reality. I do produce an image that looks like it's saying where he is lonely and the Christmas tree is set. But but this is my interpretation. Yeah. So this is what I see, what I do recognize, I connect, and this is kind of this goes through my mind, and then I make a picture, and then you hear it. But we don't know what the reality was. So here, because of the little boy is my son, I know he was disappointed, but of course he's not unhappy. So, right.
Well, Manuel Alvarez Bravo told me actually a very interesting thing that has to do psychologically. He says when he sets up little mementos and he would shoot, and then he would read what critics said, he would say sometimes, like often, I didn't think of that, and maybe the critic's right. Maybe that's really in my mind, but I'm not aware of it. So it is, who knows what the reality is in a certain sense, right? It's all interpretive, and we don't necessarily even know ourselves what's in our mind, but we might shoot a picture that has much more symbolism for what really is deeper inside us than we even know. So it's now you got me going on the psychological thing. So no, fascinating.
Okay. So there's another happy picture, happy image, and it was again Spain. It was on the train, and again, I didn't plan to make it. I was just being there with my camera, and I saw these guys, and they looked happy. And for me, when I look at this image, this feeling of being in love, being happy, being at ease, being free. And I like the graffiti, and I like the wheel, because it adds this joy element, that's a freedom element. And I also like that it's a reflection. And this reflection adds the feeling of illusion. So it's elusive moment. So there's a bliss of happiness, or maybe of being in love. And but it's elusive. It will pass. Oh, it's elusive because it's a memory. So it's a memory that arises. And so this was a moment I saw, and like I connected to this feeling, to that what I saw, and I made a shot of it. And but who knows, was the couple in love or not? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe they're brother and sister. I can't tell. I just sort of sat in front of them. But that's what I made out of that reality, let's say. So. And this now I come to my last image. This again, Spain. It's a building of an old library, and this is a toilet, a male toilet. And again, I was just on the way to the library and passing the male toilet. I've noticed like beautiful light is shining, and I thought, so I probably go in and make a shot. And I was hesitating for a moment because it's Spain. Like Spain is a bit more traditional than Germany. So in Germany, I would go straight. But in Spain, I was hesitating, and I was right, because the second I was in this male toilet, crawling on the floor, making all these reflections, the security man came in and he asked me, Senora, do you know it's a public space? And I said, yes. And he said, do you know it's a male toilet? And I said, yes, obviously. Yes. And when I continued shooting, because I just wanted to make a shot and just disappear. And he said, do you know it's prohibited to shoot here? And I said, yes, but it's about light. And he looked at me like I'm like completely insane. But at that moment I finished already, and she just let me go. And this is a lovely detail about people in Spain. They may be sometimes traditional, but they're absolutely lovely, and they do let you. So I knew that I can do this. He will ask me, but he's not really angry or something. And this photo for me, this is about finding beauty, like in everywhere, in ordinary things, in the male toilet. So somewhere where you didn't expect it. I didn't expect it. I was just passing by, and I really love this photo. I like the tree and the green, and it has something from a painting, and some people said they can see something from Edward Hopper here. So I like it a lot, the aesthetics of this photo. And when you would see this toilet, you would not believe it could be so beautiful. And it was also music, like 80s, 90s, playing the Angels from Robbie Williams. And I was so amazed that so simple things can be so beautiful. And going again back to simple, well, I do think my images are pretty simple, and they have a clear message. And I like simplicity. I think I think simple things, beautiful things are often simple things, and happiness is simple, and truth is simple, and beauty is simple. So I do really enjoy to be outside in the world, and when I discover the simplicity, what is there in life, I do make a shot, and I don't make a lot of techniques or something about it. And this again, that's my approach. How do I do this? And yes, that was my last image I wanted to show.
Well, so beautiful, and your awareness of light and color and simplicity, but then a lot of complexity at the same time is really beautiful. And so for everybody out there, so all three people will be together, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. We won't do a big Q&A between images. I'm sorry, between presenters. We'll do it more at the end, though what you guys did by putting questions in the chat for the person is also great. But Elena, amazing work. And I'd love to get more into the psychology with you. Maybe after all three, we can do that, because when we were talking before, it really is more relevant now more than ever with COVID and what's going on in Ukraine, which we talked about. But I mean, mental health is such a big deal. And of course, you have a young kid too, who, how old is he now?
He's now 5.5.
Wow. So for half of his life, he's grown up in this COVID world. And so for us, especially as we get older and older, it's a small percentage of our life to have COVID and other things. But for a child, that's a whole other thing. So thank you so much for amazing presentation. So Amy's next up.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. I love to hang out with other people who love photography, and it's nice to see some familiar faces out there. So thank you for having me. I am a photographer based in Brooklyn. I specialize in street portraits, which I feel like is not an aspect of street photography that's really discussed much. It's basically, you know, the difference between Deanne Arbus and Gary Winogrand, both of whom have had really, you know, and have really inspired me and impacted my photography as I've gone along. And I think, you know, the elephant in the room is that, you know, Deanne Arbus was super interactive with the people that she photographed, and Gary Winogrand only wanted to be invisible, according to the interviews I've seen of him. And I think that Gary Winogrand's approach is the more traditional way that we think about street photography. And in fact, I think Joel Meyerowitz thinks that is the only street photography that exists, that street photography is inherently hands-off. You inherently can't interact with the subject on the street, or else it becomes something else. I may have pigeonholed him, and, you know, maybe there's more nuance there, but for me, the interaction is what has brought me to photography. And in fact, like New York City in particular, I was a writer and a painter before I started photographing, and I love them both, but they were super lonely, just you and your keyboard or you and your canvas. And, you know, I always heard like the city going on outside my window or wherever I was living, and always wanted to be there. And, you know, it wasn't a perfect fit. And then I had this sort of like breakdown and reconfigured everything and came to street photography. And it was a lot of, because there's so much living out in New York City, and, you know, we live on top of each other, and we have these small apartments, so we're often outdoors. And I really do think that it was a combination of needing a new pathway in life, and also just happening to be situated in New York City. So much life on the streets, so much diversity. It was just such an exciting place for me. And yeah, it's been like 20 years, and street photography is, I can't explain to you what an important role it plays in my life. It's really quite a leader, a thread, a way of focus. And it's also a way for me to keep things real. Going out in the street, it's, you know, interacting with people. It's very different than reading the news or, you know, hearing what's going on in the world. I get a lot out of photographing people on the street. And again, it's a lot about this interaction. It's not about being invisible. So before I get like going on too long, why don't I share my screen? Which should be all set. So eventually, when I found my way in photography, I started making street portraits, Rolleiflex, with my Rolleiflex. I started with a Yashica mat, and once I realized I loved the square format, saved up some money and got a nicer camera with a nicer lens. And these are obviously, I think it's obvious, very collaborative. These are, you know, people I see on the street and stop and ask for a moment of their time. I introduce myself. Part of this approach, I think, is one of the key things is, knowing what you're going to say to people ahead of time. How are you going to persuade people, strangers, to let you photograph them and, walk away with their image in your film camera that you can't even show them. And that sort of goes back to what I was saying earlier about how important street photography is for me, because when you hone that script, what you're really doing is learning how to engage with people in healthy and honest ways. And where is that not relevant in every aspect of your life? So I get a lot out of trying to explain to people my passion for street photography. And I keep my little spiels very short and sweet. I know that this young couple are being polite with me by letting me photograph them, but they are there to hang out with themselves and not with me. And so I try to be really respectful of people's time. I only take 2 frames of each subject. The first frame, I let them pretty much just present as they want to. I ask them to look into the lens, but otherwise that's it. And then the second frame, I might give them some more direction, but that's it. It's a very short interaction. I definitely create space for people to present as they want to present. I do see it as a collaboration. I'm not giving a lot of direction. I do often like just how people naturally pose themselves in the first image. But sometimes there needs to be room for, a follow-up or whatever. And for me, it's really important to have these interactions be positive. I don't want anyone to ever feel rejected. And so when I do give direction, it's very light. And we just see what happens. And I'm not too caught up in the result. I mean, yes, I do want to share an image. I am a photographer. I love still images. I love their silence. I love how you can stare and it's not impolite like it is in every other aspect of life. But the truth is, I photograph because of the experience of photographing. It's so fun being out there. And even when it's not fun, because stuff does go down and it's such an edifying experience. I can't even tell you how much I learn about my own shortcomings when things do go wrong. Just trying to explain to someone that I want to take a picture of a stranger can be very weird for people. A lot of people don't know what street photography is and don't understand why anyone would want to take a picture of a stranger. Like, you only take pictures of your family and friends, right? So there's a lot to explain to people. Some of the hairier situations tend to arise when I don't ask people permission for their photographs before I make them. And after this section of Rolleiflex pictures, I'll show you other images that are just that, candid, unposed, and sort of how I approach that. We can talk about that as we're looking at those pictures.
Right.
Yes.
Carl had a question pertaining to this part. It says, Amy, why do you call your work street portraits rather than just portraits?
Because they're on the street, and basically portrait is too big of an umbrella, and that's what I mean. It's an interesting genre, if that's the right word, because I don't go deep with these people. I don't know their names. I don't know their situation. We don't have these long conversations unless we happen to. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we get into long conversations. But it's still, like other street photography, very much lives on the surface, and the profundity of what happens as a street photographer comes from the many miles you walk over, who knows, a gazillion years. You just, when you're not piercing the surface, say that like documentary photography does, you start amassing all of this experience with these people and with yourself and trying to kind of commune with them. And that makes it different than just straight up portraiture, you know.
I agree completely. And Ken does have one that I think pertains to a lot of people. Just about, are you getting their names? Are you getting releases, doing anything like that at all?
You know, I do not. I do not. And sometimes that's a problem. Most of the time, it isn't. Most of the time, I can still use them in the way that I want. I'm not looking to make advertisements with these people's photographs. So I feel like, you know, it's not totally necessary since I'm not an advertising photographer. That said, um, you know, when you have a model release, for me, again, this goes back to like how much the experience is important to me. To make someone's picture and to receive this trust of theirs, and then to pull up this sheet of paper and say, oh, thank you so much. And by the way, like, can you sign this? That gives me every single right to do whatever I want with this image. And you haven't even seen it. I don't know. I can't stomach it. It really sort of ruins like the person to person trust here. It brings the law into it. And it's, you know, chances are that I'm even going to need a model release is so few and far between. I just have decided not to go there.
Right. And
And you know, it's
editorial,
controversial. I understand that. And when I talk to students, you know, it's not always the best advice to give to students, but it's how I roll.
well, editorial work on the streets. I mean, you could not have a newspaper in this world if everybody had to sign a release. I mean, there is a big separation, Ken, but this is maybe for another time when there's a law thing on photography. But there's a big distinction between editorial usage and advertising usage. I know there was a famous thing about somebody photographed on the street didn't want to be photographed on the street, but that's a whole other discussion. But it's definitely a valid question for sure. With this poor guy, looks like he took one in his right eye.
I know, you know what? Of course, that's what we all think. And this is what I love about street photography because there is so little context, the viewer can really get in there and make his or her own story about, oh, how did this guy get his black eye? Well, turns out he's like now this photograph was made maybe in 2013. So some 10 years ago, he's like a pretty famous skateboarder. So I never asked him, but I'm pretty sure that he probably got it, you know, falling on a skateboard or something like that. So it's interesting, isn't it? And I only know this because I have a couple of friends in the skateboarding industry who have been like, oh, this is, you know, some guy, I forgot his name. So yeah, we never know what we're looking at, right? And so, you know, there's so many lessons that street photography teaches me, and one of them is to, you know, not judge someone from the out, and just to really be open about who people are. And I get surprised all the time, and it's, you know, it's really lovely. A lot of people walk around with, you know, resting faces that look like maybe they wouldn't be into being photographed, and then you ask them and their face lights up and they're ready to be photographed. You know, a lot of people, you know, I want to say, like you were discussing William Klein in the beginning, and it's so interesting to hear that he has that perspective. And I get what he's saying, and I'm often up against what he's talking about. But I do also want to say that there are a lot of people who really enjoy being seen. I'm just going to go back to this because to talk about this book in a second. They really like. Everyone always asks me, like, what happens when people get really mad? But no one says, like, did you ever make anyone's day? You know, which happens. Like, I'm not saying I go around making everyone's day all the time, but a lot of people feel seen. And it's one of the reasons that I will push back against, you know, the demise of street photography or traditional ways that we've photographed, because I really feel like it's good for us as the human race to be, essentially, I'm walking around saying I like you when I ask for their photograph. And so is that so wrong? you know,
right.
and the problems are when, you know, William Klein took a lot of photographs without asking permission. And so that's a totally different animal. But
And
I
he
think,
really got in people's face with the wide angle lens. I mean, he tried to almost be confrontational in some of his angles and really getting in there. Wendy does ask about when you're shooting kids like this image, are you asking if the parents are around permission first at all, or?
yeah, if the parents are around, for sure. Their parents weren't around. So I didn't ask.
Right.
You
And
know,
there's a big
and
difference.
that's, you could do another whole show on that aspect, right?
Oh,
Of
100%.
children, yeah.
Well, and also things have really, like in Germany now, and when all three of us get together or four of us get together at the end, we can talk about that, because in Europe, there's some rules now in place that make it much tougher. I saw that you also shot in Tokyo, like Klein, interestingly enough. And so you
Yeah.
must see, since you do take this on the road, big differences between shooting on a street like this in one country, one culture, maybe even from one city to another. Do you see a lot of differences when you go?
Yes. I think, you know, if you're a street photographer, the first thing you need to know is learn the local rules of where
Well,
you are.
not even rules. I'm talking about just people's when you go up with the camera. I mean, maybe like, you know, Elena shoots in Vietnam. Every kid on the street loves to get in front of the camera and shoot, whereas kids are very street savvy in New York from an early age. And so, and you know, something, you know,
Yeah,
Tokyo.
there are similarities. In many ways, it's just like being in New York, and in other ways, it can be a little different. But people are people is what I've learned, and so much of it as a photographer is like how you approach people, and so that's your personal sort of consistency that you bring to it. So, you know, every time I ask someone for a photograph, like I'm also bringing everything that I am to the situation. So, there can, that, you know, it can often result in similar situations. And I think that's because I'm the one that is initiating them. But you know, even in New York City, different communities, say, if we're just talking about children, have different reactions to the photograph, being photographed, sorry. So it's always unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen, what people are going to say. And, you know, that's certainly part of the challenge of it. It's also part of the fun. So this is a book that I made recently called Bed-Stuy, Personal Ties, Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And I live in Bed-Stuy. This is a very personal work for me because it is of my community, my adopted neighborhood. I moved here in 2015 and made Rolleiflex portraits until about 2018. And it's been a really lovely experience for me. I moved to New York in about 25 years ago. And, you know, I don't belong anywhere in this city, meaning I didn't grow up here, and I'm not a native to any of the neighborhoods. And so for me, I try to belong through my camera. And it was really great to make these photographs. I went out every day at the same time and walked the same route. I even wore the same clothes, just because I feel like, you know, I want to also let people get to know me. And I feel like if I walked the same route and wore the same clothing, they would probably recognize me from day to day. At least someone would. And that's sort of just my way of trying to open conversation with people. I don't always have the courage that I want to ask for portraits when I see people. So, you know, maybe I'll give them a smile one day, and if I see them, you know, the next week or something like that, then maybe I'll have the courage to ask them for the portrait then. And we've sort of created a little bit of a relationship there. Oh, there's that girl who, you know, walks the block with her Rolleiflex camera. And, you know, the Rolleiflex doesn't hurt. It's such a conversation piece. It's an old camera. Kids don't know it. the older folks do. I feel that it commands a little bit of respect that I love. It's also an extremely simple camera, which I adore. I love film photography. It's just like, I mean, get out of town, like every piece of grain is like a snowflake, this incredibly soulful aesthetic. And I really like how it slows me down too.
Yeah,
On the
Richard,
other hand, go ahead.
well, Richard, one of our viewers was asking that exact question about how the people react to it, because in this cell phone age and digital camera age, to see this is something, as you said, a lot of people have not seen before. Anybody below 20, maybe, this is such an oddity. And also the amazing discipline that you have, because you said it's 2 frames, right? For the most part, or
yeah, with film photography, we have to be so careful about expenses, and it's very slow. We got to take it to the store, et cetera, et cetera. So, I also shoot very slowly. We really concentrate when we're making these pictures, me and my subjects, and we go for it. And I think that there's something about being really precious with your materials that means that when you do click the shutter, like you're pretty sure, you're pretty sure you got it. Maybe someone blinked, but usually you can even tell, you can figure that out. So it's really lovely. I really enjoy, most of my photography is with film. So that's always been a big part of photography for me, is using it in that traditional way. Now I do want to, so the other half of my presentation here is iPhone images. So I do work in 2 ways as a street photographer. One with my Rolleiflex film camera that really slows me down, that's super collaborative, intentional. And then I work with my iPhone. I photograph, my iPhone is basically for like every situation in which I've missed in between. So if I'm on my way to the subway or to the cleaners, if I'm, I don't deliberately go out with my iPhone. When I'm out with my Rolleiflex, I do also have my iPhone in my hand, but these pictures are mostly, just these in-between moments that the iPhone is perfect for getting. So I, work on these really opposite ends of the spectrum. The iPhone, to me, I can photograph super cavalierly with. I don't have to think about it. If I see something and I think, I'm probably not going to get that, I try to make the picture anyway, because I have nothing to lose. And I really enjoy the way the iPhone has presented me with this other way of photographing. It's sort of like, I was a studio art major in college, and we used to, before our painting classes or our drawing classes, have these really quick like sketch sessions, like, okay, 1-minute sketches, 3-minute sketches, and then the model would change or whatever. And these were, warm-ups that we would do for class when we had made longer drawings. And I feel like the way I use my iPhone is analogous to that. It's supposed to be quick. I do not speak with these people before I make their picture. Often I don't speak with them at any point. They're really, sometimes I hardly stop walking myself when I'm making them. Depends on the situation. Obviously, I have to deal with like getting a picture in focus and stuff like that. But I like to not think too much about it, because it is different than with my Rolleiflex stuff, where I do think really hard. I really enjoy just being out there and being free.
Right. And you're also shooting, what's interesting, it seems like you're keeping the iPhone low to be at roughly the same height that you shoot your Rollie.
Oh, interesting. I wonder if that's sort of like my cropping after, because I don't crop my Rolleiflex, but I do crop my iPhone pictures. And I wonder if I've just been so used to, that's an interesting comment, so used to a certain aesthetic that I prefer, that maybe I've cropped them to have that similar feel.
Well, not even a cropping, it just feels like you're holding it down lower.
True.
To get
I mean, it's not up at my eye. Yeah, it is
exactly.
sort of shooting from the hip. I can't really, I do look, I mean, I'm trying to get in focus, you know, and there is a little place to do that on the iPhone, believe it or not.
But for the film, somebody asked, are you shooting negative film or reversal? I gather film. I mean, negative for sure.
Yes, portrait, Kodak portrait.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I mean, one of the, do you feel sometimes nervous, like inside that sort of pang, like, oh, should I go up to them, or have you just broken through that you don't have that anymore?
No, I think that never goes away, or at least it hasn't for me. But what has gone away is my aversion to that feeling. So when I feel it, it's like, oh, there, I know that feeling so well, you know, I know that feeling so well, and I'm just gonna push through it or not. You know, I mean, there are definitely situations on the street that are unsafe to photograph. And, you know, I feel like a lot of photography is about the art of listening, like with your eyes, with your ears, with every cell of your body. And there are certain things that would be unsafe to photograph. And you know, you do have to think of your safety out there. And I have steamrolled through those feelings of, you know, that pang, oh, should I or shouldn't I? And, you know, it wasn't the right decision. So I think it can't be like anytime you feel that, just go for it. There's a little bit of in between, and you learn how to negotiate that with people and with yourself. I think, you know, part of why I am comfortable still making portraits without asking people on the street beforehand is because I really believe that society needs these kinds of images. I also photograph only, you know, I've had a gazillion conversations with myself about when I will photograph someone and when I won't. If someone signals to me that they don't want to be photographed, I'm not going to photograph them. You know, I'm out here to make friends, not enemies. And when people get upset, it bums me out. You know, it's not unheard of, but it, you know, it's not at all where I was going. Even when I'm not asking people for permission, like in these photographs, I adore this woman. You know, I love her, and I'm so glad I have this picture to always look at, because this moment when she looked at me in the eye was so fleeting, I could hardly see it. And again, this is just like one of the gifts of photography, is that we get to stare at these super fleeting moments that we couldn't even catch with our own eye, because time is a continuum that just keeps going and going and going. So, but anyway, I've made certain rules for myself on the street. I don't, if I'm going to photograph someone without asking their permission, I don't photograph a homeless person. I don't photograph someone who's drunk or sneezing or picking their nose or is otherwise going through a difficult time out on the street. And any common sense would tell you that they'd rather not be out airing their situation. So if people do get upset with me for making a picture without asking, they are always innocuous settings, in my opinion. They, you know, I feel like I can explain why I made the picture, and my explanation is simply the truth. You know, your kid looked so cute, the light was so nice, you looked so peaceful. And, you know, once you realize you have truth on your side, then you can navigate the streets with more ease and confidence and belief that images like this need to be made and should continue to be made, despite the difficulties that are presented with today's society.
Because you're really freezing a moment in time that is gone forever in daily life. And, you know, so often, you know, with the news, people are going for the sensational. And unfortunately, in the world, we have so many sensational things going on, you know, with elections and with violence, with COVID, everything else. And so when you get, when you can really do a great series of daily life, and Elliot Irwood has talked about this before, about the 99.9% of the time that most of us live, and you're capturing that. It's not as sexy as going off and shooting some protest somewhere, but I would argue, as I think what you're saying, it's much more important, because this is really the reality for most of us of life on this planet.
Yes, and you know, for me, photography has always been an antidepressant And it wasn't until rather recently that I found out that looking people in the eye can release oxytocin, which is a hormone that makes you feel good and connected to others. And I was like, no wonder why I love photographing on the street so much, you know, because even when things go wrong, I'm still connecting with other people. And there is this feeling of being in it together that really resonates with me. So yeah, I enjoy photographing the non-sensational. It's very true.
That's a great way to say it. Non-sensational. Did you come up with that actually?
No, well, I think it's a word. So
no. But that expression, photographing the non-sensational, is a great way to label it, and not enough people, I think, do that. I think that's fantastic. Photographing the non-sensational.
Thank you.
You guys, you heard it here first. Oh. Now that's amazing, that last shot. I mean, all of these are fascinating, but that's really something.
Yeah, I live near a big public pool, and so, you know, they just got out of the car, and I guess they were ready with their their gear.
No, but even that they have those tank tops, I mean, the whole ensemble.
I know.
It's really something. That's amazing.
There's a lot of joy out there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I have the bad habit of photographing while I'm driving.
Oof.
I mean, I was stopped, but
right.
Yeah, I have to be like,
one would hope.
I have to have talks with myself periodically about my own safety.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
Anyway, oh, this is a little behind the scenes. My last image here. This is
wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and so appropriate as well. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Great images. And so, as I said, we're going to have the Q&A with everybody at the end, but really amazing work. And I love the fact how you've combined so seamlessly, your Rolly shots with the iPhone shots. Is there something you're doing in post to the iPhone shots to get them to look more consistent?
Yeah, I definitely do mess with all the filters. So actually, these are all like, they're not only iPhone, they're Instagram images. I do process them through Instagram. Basically got me into digital photography because I realized I could make a photograph, edit it with all the amazing filters and present it or share it, through Instagram, like all in one day, which is so different than my Rolleiflex work, which sometimes I hold on to for years before I share it with anyone. So this sort of goes back to how much I love the difference of the iPhone and going through the process, like all in one day. And yes, I do. I like a certain saturation, and I really, I love the square, even though I don't photograph with my iPhone in the square. I photograph full frame, and then I'll crop it later. So
right. and that, but it's just so seamless. It's magnificent. And so you actually, so you have a book signing coming. So we have ICP classes for you.
Oh yeah. So I don't know if anyone out there is interested, but I'm teaching a street portraiture class at ICP called Intention and Improvisation. It's Wednesday nights, starting this Wednesday, which is April 13th, I think, through June 15th. Just a couple more days to sign up if you're interested. And then I'm also having a book launch for anyone who's in New York. There's a new bookstore that Michael Foley just began called Launch Photo Books. And there's going to be a talk there with the woman who wrote my afterword, C. Joy Sanchez, for this book, Personal Ties. This is the one that I was discussing earlier.
Right.
Where's the picture? C. Joy Sanchez is the afterword writer. She is a third generation Bed-Stuy resident, and she wrote the most beautiful personal essay in the book. And I'm really looking forward to having people get to know her a little bit. Rebecca Bengal is going to facilitate the conversation between Joy and me, and there'll be books there to
what date is that?
Oh, sorry. That is Thursday, April 28th at 7 p.m. at Launch Photo Books, which is in the back of Foley Gallery in the Lower East Side in Manhattan.
Cool. I would be there if I were in New York for sure. That would be amazing. But thank you so much, Amy. So we'll stay around so we can have some Q&A at the end, and we're going to bring Melissa in.
So I'm Melissa. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to LACP for having me. I am originally from Los Angeles, so it's close to my home. Well, not close to my home anymore because most of my adult life I have spent in New York City, but I'm always homesick for LA and California. So it's very nice to be here. Today, I want to do something I've never done before. I've been giving a lot of presentations and talks and interviews lately, and I kind of tend to show the same photos, tell the same story, answer the same questions. Like, why do you shoot in black and white? What do you look for? What's your inspiration? And today, I just kind of wanted to throw that all away and just do something completely new. So I decided I would show a lot of my early work and then kind of my mid-range work and then where I am now. So I have a ton of photos, but I'll go through them kind of quickly. And I will share my screen. All righty. That's my name and where I live. So first I want to talk about my discovery of street photography. You know, all of the street photographers I know, like nobody as a kid grew up saying, I want to be a street photographer when I grow up. I mean, maybe kids now, but nobody from my generation. So, and people come from so many different backgrounds. Like Amy, I was a painter. I always wanted to be a painter. I got a BFA in college, graduated, started painting, and decided I did not want to be a painter. I really did not like this situation. I didn't like having to make art to sell it. I started having shows and it was like this many pieces by this date and deadlines, and I just hated it. So after the first year of graduating from college, I decided I would go back to school, get my master's in museum studies so that I could write about the arts rather than making them. But I also knew that I really wanted to keep making visual projects. So right before I'd made that decision, I'd gone on a trip with a good friend of mine. We went to Turkey and Greece, traveled all over, and she was a photographer, and she still is. And she recommended that I bring a Holga, and I had never had a Holga. I'd never done any photography. I knew nothing about it. So I took this amazing, toy camera. This is back in the 90s, all over Europe and Turkey. And so when I decided that I wasn't going to be a painter, I decided I'm going to be a photographer. That's what I'm going to do for my kind of creative side thing. So I got my first kind of grown-up camera. I was taking tons of travel pictures. I was traveling a lot then. And I'd come home to New York and I'd keep taking my travel photos. So I didn't know there was a thing called street photography. I was just doing travel photography, like staycation photography. And I really enjoyed it. I really got into it. I have tons of photos from that time. I've never scanned any of them, so they all live in my little archive, but someday I will break into those and see what was going on back then. But then I'm making this a really long story. It was supposed to be a short story, but I'll try to be quick. I had kids, digital photography really kind of took over, and I really just stopped shooting. I didn't really have the time to do film photography with kids. I didn't like digital photography at all at the time. And so I just didn't really shoot. And then I all of a sudden took my phone out and started shooting with my phone. So that's what I'm going to show you first. A lot of iPhone photography from like 2009, around then, like early days. And this is like, I was an early adopter of Hipstamatic. So a lot of these are Hipstamatic. And I just loved shooting with the phone because I could get these qualities that I got from the Holga. It's like really lo-fi, really like distorted. It didn't take a lot of skill because the filters in the camera did a lot of the work for you. But it really was my kind of gateway back into photography. And it was really what was able to launch me into finding a digital medium that I really liked a lot.
Well, sorry for my naivete on this, but and most of you guys out there might know what this is, but a hipstamatic?
Oh, so Hipstamatic is I guess an app, iPhone app that takes square photos, and they have different settings. So you could take like Holga look or, Polaroid look. And so it's just kind of an iPhone toy camera,
Gotcha.
Essentially.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But it made it easy to take really compelling photos that had a lot of feel of what I used to enjoy with the Holga. And I was really able to start kind of working on some of the themes that I still use now. So like, this is like a reflection. So I was really able to kind of start just really opening my eyes and looking at street photography with a new, kind of a fresh look, older, had kids, done a lot since I was first out there taking photos. So just kind of going through, I was shooting in the train a lot. It was really easy to shoot in New York City with your phone too, because everybody's taking photos, everybody's reading on their phone. It was an easy way to get comfortable taking people's photos. So not all of these are hipstamatic. A lot of these were just regular straight photos that then I would crop square to kind of match. I took a ton of puddle photos, and I thought I invented the puddle photo. I didn't, but I learned that. So it was around this time I started sharing images on social media, on Facebook initially. And I discovered that there was this whole thing that was called street photography. I had no idea. I was like, wow, this is amazing. These are my people. Yes, I found out that I did not invent the puddle photo.
Well, Cartier-Bresson with his decisive moment, jumping over the puddle of Saint Lazare.
I know, but this is the problem when you come into a new genre with no background or having not studied it. I knew a lot about painting and sculpture and drawing and the decorative arts, and I knew nothing about photography, which in a way was great because I came kind of fresh.
Oh, I agree. I think that's fantastic. You came in clean, but you've got the classic training with your eye from the fine art background.
Yeah,
maybe
right.
It's an advantage in certain ways that your mind's not clogged up with things.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. But then I was looking at social media all the time and all of the millions of street photographers on Facebook, which may have been worse for me, which we will get into shortly. So, I didn't know that there was this tradition of women New York street photographers like Mary Ellen Marks shooting kids. And, I thought I was inventing this all because that's what artists do when they're not really connected with the rest of the world. But I had a lot of fun with the phone, and it really allowed me to re-enter photography, given that I wasn't working with film anymore. Okay, so Scott, finding my voice or how I learned humor wasn't my thing. Here we go into social media, my identity crisis, and exploring themes.
Let me ask you, sorry, because you come from a fine art. Is that an actual font, or is that that is an amazing type?
It is a font. I know, it's one of the few fonts I like. I just found it. I don't remember what it's called, but I'll let you know. It's in the Google Slides options.
But
it's good, right?
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to mention it. But that's your artistic. All of you guys obviously have the artistic eye. We wouldn't be with you guys today, but that's just beautiful segue with that type of font, and
you'll see it again. I'll pause on it longer next time.
Here we go.
So all of a sudden, I'm seeing all of the street photography work all over the place, and there's just so many different styles. And I'm like, what's my style? What's my voice? I don't really know. And I really loved all these funny pictures. I'm like, I want to take funny pictures. A lot of photographers, street photographers, are doing this, like these funny juxtapositions. There's signs and there's backgrounds and funny visual puns. I'm like, I'm going to do that. So I tried, and I just hated it. This was one of them. I'm like, this is so funny. I'm like, I just hate it so much. Here's another one. Like, this is porky, so I like it. It's kind of bizarre, but it's like, I don't want to take funny photos. So I had to stop doing that. Then I moved on to like the characters, right? It's kind of like the Bruce Gilden, but with not being like mean and annoying, kind of like the subtle girl, Bruce Gilden. And like the characters, and like so many characters. New York City is just like the place of characters. So it's just like amazing. But I kind of felt like what am I doing with this photo? Like, I don't know. It's the subject is doing all the heavy lifting. This is all like, this person is being themselves. They're doing all the work. All I'm doing is snapping a photo. Like what, I don't know, just wasn't me. And those, I think, are kind of like the main kind of like two big genres that street photographers often really explore. It's like the characters or the humor. Or the weather. So I found out that I really, really liked taking photos with weather. The importance of atmosphere was really a mood I liked a lot. This was one of my very first umbrella photos, and we will see a lot of umbrella photos in my own work and in everybody else's work. And we'll talk about that when I talk about cliches. Definitely a cliche, but I love weather photos and I love umbrellas. This is one of my first umbrella photos. This was one of my first snow photos. I would go on to take a lot of snow photos.
Well, actually, it's interesting. Mark Rabou said that the sun is the enemy of photography. Obviously meaning direct, daylight sun, where a lot of these, there's a beautiful overcast light. I mean, obviously we saw in Elena's just that beautiful use of, the sun and the warm Kelvin temperatures and all that. It's interesting because you're shooting in black and white. Do you prefer overcast days when working in black and white?
I really, really like sun, but I don't like noon sun. I like raking light. So when the light's coming into the city at different angles, just my favorite. But for when I'm doing a lot of reflections, so if it's not a sunny day, I really go for the reflections, because the reflections can be really beautiful when it's not so sunny. So this is, by now I have graduated to a Fuji X system, and this was Fuji X Pro 1. A lot of my work is with that camera, which I used for almost 10 years. And it was just amazing to go from basically from an iPhone to this really, really lovely, beautiful camera to work with. And I started really playing around with bokeh and focus, and I really was focusing on a lot of details. And I really liked how it taught me kind of the art of isolating, and how to kind of like blur out the noise of the city and focus on these special parts, which I would go on to do quite a lot. It's just like a girl's top knot. I loved it. And gestures became really important. Like this isn't something I would shoot today. It's like, it's a little too literal, and I'm much more into kind of mystery and atmosphere, and it's much artier now, but just observing and finding gesture and humanity in the scenes. This was just on the New York City ferry. I just thought it was such a lovely little moment. And again, just details and isolating. She just had such a beautiful face, and I liked, just like doing that really shallow depth of field, just so she's the star of the story. And especially in New York City, there's so many people and there's so much visual noise. There's signs and cars. It's so chaotic. And I find with it, really using a wide open lens, I can really kind of pull a person out, and the story can kind of become about them. And a lot of times my figures are isolated, and it's not about loneliness or isolation, really. It's about kind of making the subject the star of the image, and pulling out these moments and these people from just the chaos of New York City, and just giving them a moment to be like the star on the stage.
What is the focal length of that lens? I mean, you're getting right. You did that beautiful bouquet. What does on that? It's a Fuji.
A Fuji X Pro 1. I was shooting with 35.
Okay.
1.4.
That's a fixed 35-1.4. Great.
Yeah, just a really, really lovely combination.
Yeah.
And then I kind of started an eye contact phase. So I would go on to really kind of avoid eye contact, but and I'll talk about that more too, even though maybe now that I've heard Amy speak, I should be seeking more eye contact for that anti-depression shot. But I really was enjoying eye contact, and I've never really had any problems taking anybody's photos before. Maybe one time somebody asked me not to after I'd taken it, and I deleted it from my camera with her. But like Amy, I'm never ever going to take a photo of a person when they're not showing their dignity. It's like the dignity is so important to me, and you know, you're not going to see me like somebody eating or somebody, you know, like Amy said, like sneezing or homeless or drunk. But how did I get there? Eye contact. But I did start to want to take photos that were kind of where the subject was more in their own moment and not really having an interaction with me. So these eye contact photos were kind of a departure. But with each of them, there's something I took away. So like this was, the other one was like the light. This was framing. And, you know, just looking around at the atmosphere all the time for where frames are and what can be used to help create a nice composition. And he was just great looking too. So good looking.
Well, it's interesting. The last two are really almost like fashion, editorial fashion shots. I mean, the one before with the girl in a cafe almost looks like a Peter Lindbergh or Jean-Luc CF. Do you do any fashion editorial work at all?
I do not, but once I'd really kind of established my look and what resonated with me, I think what I look at most now is vintage fashion photography. So like Gordon Park and Saul Leiter, like all of these old great photographers, their fashion work is so beautiful. Oh, yeah. Lillian Bassman, and there's so many. And I would love to do fashion or editorial, but you know, I haven't. I don't really do anything commercial. Yeah. This is another eye contact photo. This is Grand Central Station, and this would become my probably #1 favorite place to shoot in New York City. And this is one of my first photos there. Another with eye contact. This again is light. I really, really love that angularity that you can get with light, you know, to help create, you know, more of an atmosphere, really kind of sharpen the composition. And I would go on to also do a pretty like involved series of people in restaurants working. I did a whole series, but I worked in restaurants. When I first moved to New York, it was like a really magical time, and I love taking photos of waitresses. So, but that's a whole other story for another time. I kind of ended up veering away from eye contact, but like in this shot, it's like the isolation of the subject became really important. So it's like, it's kind of like an ugly truck behind, like things that weren't that beautiful to me, but she was so beautiful. And she just, the way the light was shining on her and there's that reflection and just being able to isolate her, she just like, it's just, I love the way she stood out and kind of again became the star of the show. She looks a little bit like Mary Ellen Mark, a little bit, actually. Oh, that's true. Yeah. Can you imagine if it was her? It depends on what year you shot. You never know. It could have been, if it was a number of years ago. In person, it didn't look, I think I would have recognized her. Oh, okay, yeah. And then I discovered windows and reflections, and that was it for me. this became kind of like a lasting obsession and something that really informs my work today. You know, I'm really influenced by fairy tales. I read a lot of fairy tales and Victorian literature, and I love using literature as kind of an inspiration, because it's like with a book, you have all of the inner dialogue, and I kind of like that intersection between this like image, which is nonfiction, right? It's just, it is what it is, but there's so many possibilities for this inner dialogue. So I'm kind of thinking about like, you know, Edith Wharton and, you know, fairy tales. And I love that magic and that kind of drama and interior dialogue. So a lot of reflections and also there's so much opportunity for really just strange things to see. And like this is I could see this, anybody could see it, but if we were just walking by, we wouldn't see this kind of reflection unless we're really like looking at the glass. And so all too often we're trained to look through the glass, so we don't see the reflections on the glass. But if you can kind of really focus on exactly what's happening on the glass, it's like the world just becomes really, really weird. And I love that. And you can really see it with photographs, because you can just kind of freeze it and focus on it. So yeah,
that almost looks like, that last one almost looks like a William Klein shot of Peggy Moffat. And you know what I mean? Is it almost that like, what's that, Polly something, or Polly Magoo or something, whatever Klein did, but that outfit is just so unusual. And it's that perfect moment that you caught it, and also against the white. And then, you know, outside you've got the guy, you know, doing a cell phone. There's so many layers.
Yeah.
Boy.
I don't know that photograph you're talking about, but this kind of reminded me of Clockwork Orange for some reason.
Oh yes, 100%. Oh, 100%. Well, not for some reason. I mean,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Definitely, it's got that. You know, what's interesting is, you know, the director of Clockwork Orange, Stanley Kubrick, was a big street photographer before he, you know, went on to shoot, you know, all these amazing films. Have you thought of shooting video, or have you in the past at all, or films?
Not really. I wouldn't even really know where to begin. I mean, I do little clips, a lot of little clips, which I call like moving street photos, but it's like, you know, something moving in front of me. It's not me moving. It's like if a river is moving, like I stay still, but I will film. Yes. But it's kind of different.
Yeah, and Klein actually made a number of short films too. That's interesting, but no, really just amazing. So sorry to jump in too much there.
No, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So reflections, still doing reflections whenever I can. And again, this is like when I was talking about light, the way light comes in, especially into windows, and then how reflection can kind of create atmosphere, even if the reflection isn't something so compelling like, you know, trees or flowers or birds, even if it's just urban, you know, chaos, it can still be softened and used kind of beautifully. And people gazing out windows, I just love it. I gaze out windows all the time. I love to see people gazing out windows. It's so daydreamy and reverie. And she looks a little sad here, but I don't think she, I mean, who knows? But there's kind of like just, I think she's daydreaming. That's what I'm going with. And I also really like how windows can add layers. They can add more to a narrative. I mean, anybody could kind of come up with a symbolism of somebody being behind a grid or behind wire. But I just like what it does kind of graphically, and just how it creates, you know, just a different space. And I think it can be really beautiful. She's actually looking at me. I started working more with reflections, and this is one of the first photos where I really used the floor and everything that was going on in the floor. And I think the floor is more beautiful than the rest of the photo here. But, you know, like really focusing on the floor can help kind of make this topsy-turvy feeling, and creates this whole kind of, I don't know, unit for a figure to be in. And this is also when I learned to take my camera out when I go out to eat or drink. This is one of my first photos I took of somebody who was in the same establishment that I was in. I actually took this in a mirror, so it looks like I'm looking in, but I was actually in the same restaurant as he was. And I would end up taking a lot of photos of people in restaurants, but not eating or drinking or drunk. My computer is forwarding these slides kind of slowly. So where I ended up, or how I learned not to fear cliches. So there are a lot of cliches in street photography, so many cliches. And people love to say like, oh, well, that's cliche. And oh, that photo is cliche. And at first I was really afraid of making cliche photos, but all of the themes I really liked are kind of cliche. So I thought, you know what? I don't care. I don't care if it's a cliche. I'm going to make the photos I want to make. So shadows, steam, high heels, weather, refractions, and reflections are kind of my main group of cliches and my main kind of themes. So this is all more recent work. I haven't photographed a lot during the pandemic, but this would be all like in the last 5 years or so, or maybe a little more, I don't know, but more recent than the phone and my first Fuji stuff. So this photo does verge on a humor photo, but I love shadows. You know, they take on a life of their own and they can be tricksters. I love people's shadows. Here's another one. It's like, they're so mischievous, the shadows, like what, they just do whatever they want. It's like their whole other kind of little parallel universe of things happening. And I also think it's amazing that the sun is so far away and it traveled all of this way. And like, you know, these three people got in its way right before it landed where it was going to land. And it's really kind of profound, even though it may not seem like it. The shadows can also be really elegant, and they can balance out a composition. And they can kind of suggest an alter ego, kind of a, you know, a ghost presence. I just think they're beautiful. Can be like really mysterious. This is kind of that topsy-turvy world again. And this is reflections. There's reflections of his shadows on the floor. There's the shadows of him. And there's just like a whole kind of crazy optical situation going on here, thanks to sunlight and a shiny floor. But
Mark Rabu should have seen this. Then he would might have corrected himself on the way. And actually, and I should correct myself as well. When I had the conversation with him, he was talking about black and white photography. But here's a great example of sunlight, and you wouldn't get this without direct sunlight. I mean, if it's an overcast day, this doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, of course. And sunlight, it can act like a spotlight. I love natural light, and I love sunlight. And with shadow, you can also take self-portraits without anybody knowing, sneaky self-portrait. So there's a few shadows of me in that one. And so steam. Steam has become a real, very popular trick of New York City street photographers. We've been using steam in the city since the 1880s. It's made in Con Edison. There's like 100 miles of steam pipes underneath the city, and it comes up through vents. And on a typical winter day, when there's a lot of steam coming out of the vents, I mean, the steam happens all year, but a lot in the winter. You'll often see like 15 like street photo bros around, all like trying to take the same photo. And it's all part of this kind of like atmospheric New York City at night kind of deal. So the steam photos begin. I have a lot of steam photos. It is a cliche topic, but I try to make it my own. And it's not easy to get a steam photo. So the steam comes out of these pipes, and the pipes are elevated, and it kind of whips around, and you may have a great backdrop and you may have a great person, but of course at that moment the steam is like completely in a different direction. So it's not as easy as it looks. I know it seems kind of like an easy trick, but it's not an easy trick. But I just love it. It's like clouds. It's like we live in a city where there's just big, beautiful, puffy clouds rolling down the street. It's really magical. This is one of my favorite photos I've taken. I don't know if it's one of my popular, but I love it. It's just, it feels very cinematic, and it's, you know, it's like one of these things. It's like nonfiction. This is exactly what I saw, but there's so much room for narrative and storytelling. And a lot of people are always like, oh, she's thinking this, and oh, he's thinking that, and oh, that happened. And I just love, 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 love when a photo can just become a starting point for all these different narratives. Right. Another steam photo, and one more. And I know it can be cliche, but I think that like you can really take any cliche and just make it your own. And then it's not a problem. High heels. I think, you know, a lot of times I'm asked if it's easier or harder for a woman to be a street photographer. And I mean, I think that it's hard to generalize. I know a lot of women street photographers who are, you know, really aggressive and have a hard time. I know a lot of male photographers, street photographers who have a really easy time. I mean, it's really hard to generalize. But I will say that I think being a woman and shooting women in like heels and showing their legs, I think it would be harder if I were not a woman. I just think that if a man were trying to shoot my shoes, I'd feel a little weird, but I wouldn't mind it if it were a woman. And maybe that's just.
Oh, no, 100%.
Okay.
It's just like I was in Iran shooting, and I was sitting in a park waiting for kids because it was a playground there. And so a middle-aged guy sitting in a park waiting to shoot kids, it's a little creepy.
Yeah.
Whereas, but I always think of photographers as photographers, not male, female, this or that, whatever. But we have to face reality that, I mean, Mary Ellen Mark did talk when she shot in the brothels in Mumbai. She said a man couldn't have done this. I mean, just like Gordon Parks, you know, talked about when he went to Life magazine, that he wanted to excite the editors there and says, I'll do something on a Harlem street gang. In other words, so we can take advantage of who we happen to be. That doesn't define us, male, female, whatever. But I do agree, for this particular series of heels, this could be problematic for a guy. Yeah,
I agree. That's a really good point. And I like shoes a lot. So, I mean, not in like a weird way, or not in a, not that liking shoes is weird, but
you mean fetish?
Oh God, where am I going with this?
Oh, go for it. Excellent.
I am an admirer of shoes. Yeah. So I've ended up taking a lot of, I also just love, like, I love it when people get dressed up in the city. There's so many people who, don't get dressed up. It's not about being formal, but it's just about, like, you go out and you're part of this like incredible organism that is the city. And I just feel like it's nice to, you know, dress. It's nice to put clothes on that are, you know, not sweatpants. No offense to anyone wearing sweatpants, but so I like, what's one of the reasons I like Grand Central, and I like shooting downtown too, because people are a little more formal. And it also goes back to this like love of fashion photography and this love of vintage photography, where, you know, women like dressed up and wear hats. I just a retro girl. Here's another shot, and this is incorporating a lot of the things that I've picked up along the way. There's shadows, there's using the floor, there's heels. Grand Central, favorite place. Weather. There's a lot of people shooting weather. If there's a blizzard in New York City, you know that if you go to Times Square at 6 a.m., you'll see like all of your street photography friends. So I have a lot of snow photos, but I really, really like to use the elements to help kind of create a scene and tell a story. And so glass on, water on glass, I think is especially beautiful. Just adds a level of richness that I really admire. Oops, skipped one. This is another kind of same thing. And here we have also reflections, and we have this pattern from the drips. it really adds to a mood. You know, I love rainy days, and I love looking at windows on rainy days. So, I mean, in a way, these are kind of self-portraits. I guess you could say that of most of the photos, but here's rare color. I do love color, but I feel much more inclined to shoot in black and white. When I look at photos, I shoot in color. I see photos in black and white, but I shoot in color and then I process them in black and white. But sometimes the color is just, it can't be ignored, and it wants to stay. So sometimes it stays. I love umbrellas, another very cliche topic, but you know what? I don't care. And if you like umbrellas, you should shoot umbrellas. And if you have somebody with an eye umbrella, you should definitely shoot their eyeball umbrella. More umbrellas.
Especially with the person having the rim of the glasses halfway under is really something.
Yeah, I mean, this could verge on like one of those funny photos, but I don't think it was, I liked it. I saw her walking down the street and I was like, wow, there's like little circles on her umbrella. I couldn't really see very well. I wasn't wearing my glasses. And I'm like, I'm gonna try and get those little circles to line up with her eyes when she walks by. And then it turned out they were eyes. So, so that was lucky. Refractions. So I love reflections, but I also love refractions. Anytime I see etched glass or beveled glass, when you really look into those little details of the glass, it's like just whole weird worlds are going on. And I love to be able to get this kind of effect, you know, in camera without using like a prism lens, or just, you know, using what's out there in our real atmosphere that we're looking at all the time and what we so often overlook. So this is whole idea about being so tuned in to the details, what you're seeing. And I mean, it's like whenever I'm out, it's all about the senses. It's about listening and smelling and seeing and feeling and touching. It's every sense is involved, but obviously, especially the eyes. So this glass was frosted in the pattern, but there was a bevel on the top. It was like a partition. And this was another photo. I was eating a meal and I kept, probably not a very fun dinner guest, because I just kept like looking at her, and it's actually brunch because I was drinking mimosas too. And so this seems like a very appropriate photo to be taken while one was drinking mimosas. This one, I mean, I don't think refractions are very cliche, but after I took this one, I saw a photo by Sal Leiter of Soames, his partner, and it's way, way, way more beautiful than this. But I thought, you know, I don't know if I'd ever seen that photo before. I don't remember having seen it before. And there's this whole kind of like, okay, it might not be cliche, but is it derivative? And, you know, I think that at this point in the street photography game, it's hard not to be derivative sometimes, or to seem derivatives sometimes. But again, I just feel like same thing with cliches. Like I'm just doing what I like to do. And I think that I really advocate that people should just, you know, do what they want to do regardless. Here's another refraction photo. And again, I just love the kind of surreal optical world that can come about just from, you know, the simple structure in a glass. And then reflections, like my great love. You know, I don't know, there's so much that can be brought to a reflection shot. There's so many different layers. There's what's going on inside, what's going on outside. I'm looking at through the glass, but I'm also looking at what's behind me. And I really think that there's a lot to consider, and there's a lot of mystery and a lot of beauty. And I really like how, again, you can use reflections to kind of focus on the subject. I like eyes a lot too. There's a lot of eyes in my work. And it can just create like a real fairy tale land. This was a woman looking out of a store window that had tissue paper flowers, and I just liked that really fairy tale component to it. Reflections can also work even if they're not kind of wacky, but they can just really help to, again, hone in on the subject. And reflections are everywhere. This is the side of a UPS fan. I got to the point where like I wasn't really looking at anything except shiny surfaces when I was out walking around. And I'm sure it looked like a very strange person. Another reflection. And this is my last one. This is my most popular photo by far. And it really kind of incorporates a lot of the things that I love. There's shadow, reflection, you know, a figure walking into the frame. Yeah, this is a very, very monumental photo for me. And I will say that I do have a book out, and it's called Metropolis, and it is, here's my plug, published by Peanut Press, and a limited edition print of this comes with it. So
fantastic, Melissa. Wow, amazing body of work. So thank you so much. I mean, really amazing, and amazing to Elena and Amy. And so please, you guys, you can watch, or you can follow them. They all have Instagram accounts, and I gather at least some of you, and Matthew put some links in as well. I mean, really just all through just such amazing work. And so time-wise, we've got just a couple of minutes for questions. So let me see, would be good. I just also want to say one thing. Elena has an amazing story that maybe you could just touch upon for a minute. Because obviously you speak Russian, and you've been helping through photography one of your patients, as you do therapy professionally, a Ukrainian person that was becoming housebound. Would you mind talking about that for a moment?
Yeah, actually, when I was preparing this talk, I thought I could more easily prepare a talk about how do people experience war in the moment, because in the last weeks I had 40 sessions, 40 hours with people directly in Ukraine. And so you can imagine this is, every hour is a personal story. And I do use photography in therapy. And it was a case with one lady who is scared, but again, the anxiety and depression, these are conditions that are quite common now there. So she was scared, and she didn't want to leave the house, but she was getting so bad that I told her, you should go for a walk. And she said, but you know, where do I live? I live in a village, and it's really poor and ugly. There's nothing there. There's no park there, no wood. I can't even go for a walk. And it's just ugly. So then I said, well, I mean, can you show me? Can I make a photo? And she said, yeah. And I said, when you would go for a walk, like maybe once a day, that would be really good for your health, for your nervous system. And you can send me a photo a day. And so that's our agreement. She goes for a walk, and she sends me a photo once a day. And then once a week we discuss it. And she started by sending me like photos of like rubbish and ugliness around her house. And then slowly now there's some plants, because it's spring there. So there are some plants, and there's some beauty. And I was happy to see this, because as we started, she said, there's nothing beautiful there, it's just ugly. And I say, yeah, try, maybe you see something, what is appealing, you just try. And when you see something, just send me, it's okay, you can send everything. Well, here is important, just for me, it was important that she just go out and not just stay at home. So that was the deal. And but it was interesting also to see this evolution from that like complete desperation to some plants that are coming out of the earth. And that's one story. And another story that's really like lightened up my heart last week. Like 4 days ago, I was speaking with a little girl who was 10, and she also was scared. She said, "I'm scared of falling bombs." And once I decided not to give attention to it, then the real bomb like really fell. So I can't not pay attention to it because they're like falling, and I'm scared. And what should I do? And we talk about her fears and about this. And then I asked her what she likes to do, because I wanted her a bit to switch her focus of all this war and anxiety. And I was like, "Tell me what you like to do." And she said, "Well, I'm actually writing a book." And I was thinking, "Oh, that's amazing." And then I said, "And do you also like," and she told me about a book, and "Do you also like photo?" And she says, yes, I do like photography. And I made recently 2 photos I really love. And do you want to see them? I said, "Yeah, sure, I want to see them. You can send me." And she sent me like after our session 2 photos. And well, the final minutes of our talk, she asked me, "Can I ask you another question?" And I said, "Yes, you can, sure." And she said, do you know when the war is over?" And I said, "No, Miriam, I don't know. It will go for a couple of months." And she said then, "Do you know how I think about it? I think about it like a thunderstorm and the sun. So when the thunderstorm is over, the sun is always coming." And I said, "Yes, Miriam, exactly. This is exactly how it is. And that the dark days will go away and the sun will come out." So this girl was a very, she was so small, but she was in the best condition I've spoke with people. And her photos, I can show maybe one she sent me. I think you can really see in this, and I share my screen just to show this photo. That's just one. And that was her photo.
Oh my God. Yes.
And yeah, I mean, that was so mindset. She was so helpful, and I didn't have a difficult job with her. And it's very different with other people. So this conversation with her just made me happy. And yeah, that was one of her photos she made.
Well, kids can be so resilient, and that photo, really does show hope. Thank you
so
much. It's amazing. So, you guys, we just have a minute or 2 left. So, do we have any questions out there for anybody before we wrap up this, I think, amazing session? And remember, please do check out the work. And if you're in New York and you have a chance to take, the class at ICP, I think with Amy would be amazing. And Melissa's on the streets out there. Well, I don't know if that sounds right, but
I'm out walking the streets. It's true.
It is true, and depending on how things go, I might just have to live out there. But you said you don't shoot street people, right? None of you guys really, meaning people that are sleeping on the street so much, right? That's not what it's about, right? So
no.
So if there's we have a lot of thank yous and
Mark,
I
have a question.
Yes, please.
My question is particularly for Melissa. What do you do with your settings that lets you shoot so quickly in different lights and different focal points?
Well, for most of the ones you saw here, I shoot aperture preferred. So I'll just set my aperture and I'll set my ISO. And those a lot are automatic focus, not always. I've been more recently shooting with a Leica M10 for the last 2 years, and photos look a little different, or I should say the photos that I'm missing a lot of photos because it's just a much slower process. I like the process more, but it's not those like, the autofocus is really kind of really helpful for a street photographer.
I have a question. It's for Amy. You said that you photograph, maybe two shots. One, you let the subject just pose naturally as he wishes, and then maybe you'll make some adjustments or suggestions. Can you say like which one is the one that you wind up preferring most often?
Yeah, I just got asked that question recently on the B&H podcast I did with Larry Fink, who wrote the foreword to my book.
Yeah.
It's sort of half and half, because I've found that the way people naturally present themselves can be like better than, beyond my wildest dreams. Like they bring a natural like presentation, and I love that. So, but sometimes it depends. Sometimes people are a little nervous for the first shot, and then, like no matter what happens, I always say that was amazing. And it's because I believe it. Like it doesn't matter if it was a bad photo, like this is amazing. We're having this time together. So I can really honestly give like an affirmative reaction no matter what. And then I'll say like, for this one, let's try, blah, blah, blah. So even if I want to make them like switch directions, I make sure that it's never put in with like any sort of like feelings of rejection, or like what they did wasn't perfect, because it was.
Do you find that you're drawn to ask people to take their pictures when the light is already something that appeals to you? Would you approach somebody if the light wasn't good and then you had to maybe move them?
Well, interestingly, I actually stay on the shady side of the street. There's always a sunny side and a shady side usually. And I like the shady side. So as soon as I step outside the door, I meter off my own skin in the shade. And then when I encounter someone and they have a lighter skin color than me or a darker skin color, then I'll adjust my meter settings just slightly, but I'm always in the ballpark. So yeah, I like to work in the light that I prefer so that I don't have to move them. Sometimes I have to a little bit, like if they're backlit, it's just not going to work. So I'll just move them around, but I certainly don't, take them across the street into different lighting and stuff like that. So, because there are pictures everywhere. So why not just, envelop yourself in the light that you prefer. But Elena, I wanted to just say quickly, have you ever read The Joy of Photography by Ernst Haas? It's something that I have all my students read first, and it's really basically about like how photography makes you like see. It makes you be like see properly, like in the way that you can enjoy life. And he almost talks about photography like training wheels. Like actually, once photography has taught you how to see, then you can stop making pictures and you can just like start living your life like seeing the beauty around you. So maybe, I don't know if you're interested, like I can send you a copy of this because it's so beautifully written. It's like a page and a half. It's super simple, but it's all about using photography as a way of being alive, like even with the intensities. So the joy, he's not using joy like we usually do. It's more like having tentacles that are constantly alive, and you're just like super sensitive, super aware, and that is the joy, even when you're feeling sadness. Like, so it's a different use of the term, but it's just like I go back to it all the time, and it just reminded me of what you were saying, and it's sort of like an example of a really good use of, I think, what he's getting at in that piece.
And the mindfulness aspect again that we started off with. But okay, so thank you so much, you guys, for being here. Just amazing. And of course, I'm going to be following you all as you continue on with your amazing careers. Matthew, Brandon, do you want to say a closing remark?
Yeah.
ICP? Okay.
Yeah. I can just wrap things up here, okay. Mark. So, Mark, I just want to thank you as well today for moderating and for the time here on a Sunday.
My honor.
Always appreciative of you. And I just want to thank again our presenters for today, Elena, Amy, and Melissa. Thank you so much.